Scott, you ready? You ready, buddy?
I'm ready.
We haven't done this in a while. So everybody, welcome back to Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman and me, Fred Carroll. And today we're bringing a friend in, somebody that's much smarter than both of us, much more educated than both of us, prettier than us. I think we could all agree on that. Have I done enough yet? Have I leveled it out? How are you, Scott? You good?
I'm good, man. I'm, happy Veterans Day. What a, for those who have served, bless you. Thank you very much. And your families. Thank you for your service. And, we're big with veterans today. And I just saw this really cool thing, Fred. They call it, I don't know if you've seen it, Doc, veteranpreneurship, about helping veterans. They get into business pretty well, which is interesting, but they don't have financial stamina to maintain the business. So, and they just put out some funding around it. So we're developing a workforce program, but I like the idea of helping veterans get into business. So I've got a whole new excitement going into the new year that didn't have.
I like when you're excited, Scott. I like seeing you happy and excited, even though I've never actually shook your hand in person after all these years. What are we on our 4th year together? Never met?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Amazing. So I'm going to go into this now. Okay. I love last names. Okay. Silverman is real easy. You got a little trick there. Okay. I think your last name is your name is Dr. Tara or Tara. I know my sister gets on me about that, Tara or Tara and all that. But the last name, I'm going to go with Kala Connie.
Nope.
What is it?
It's Chalakani. And some of the relatives pronounce it Shalakani. So either one of those two are correct.
So I was going with that. Originally, I went with it. First, I didn't know if the CH was going to be a SH, but possibly, or a CH. But I chose the Kalakani because I thought it was of Indian origin and went that way with it. So I'm wrong. So you don't get to see me dance.
Right.
I'm a big failure. I already failed. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me here. And happy Veterans Day.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone out there. But tell us everything about you. Start at birth. Go.
Oh, good Lord. How long is this episode?
So, you got 3 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
4 hours, as long as we can keep Fred up.
Yeah.
You guys
I'm a city girl at heart. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, and I have lived in New Jersey my entire life. Although I do have a second abode in Florida and spend some time there. I come from very humble beginnings, and everything I have, I've worked for really hard. And like most people, and I know it's the reason that we're here, that I've witnessed substance use firsthand as a child growing up and as an adult with loved ones. And now it's very much a part of my life. I'm a psychologist. I'm the CEO of a very large mental health organization that treats mental health, substance use co-occurring, and we also do a lot of prevention work, which is great. And I have a private psychotherapy practice in New Jersey, and I'm also the co-host of the Well Off podcast. So I've got a lot of irons in the fire, but all relative and I think important to the topic at hand, which is mental health and addiction. And I mean, that's really where I spend my life. It gives my life meaning and purpose, and totally believe that's why I'm here. And I started my grown up, my professional career as a nurse, and kind of evolved and morphed into where I was supposed to be. And so, I mean, I don't know how nitty gritty we want to get, but I think in a nutshell, mental health and addiction is something that I'm quite passionate about. And I'm glad to be here with you two gentlemen to discuss it, especially on Veterans Day.
So I'm familiar with Newark. Actually, I was just there. Saturday night.
Were you? And you pronounced my name right. So my first name right, because I do not like Tara or Tara. It's Tara. I'm a New Jersey girl. So you
That's
said
right.
it right the first time.
So growing up in Newark, obviously, well, not obviously, not everybody knows, but Newark is it does have some rough edges to it.
For sure.
That pushed you towards this rather than into it?
You know what? I would say no, but you never know. I mean, I saw a lot growing up, and I guess, everything you witness contributes to who we become. And like I said, I started my career as a nurse. So I guess there was something that was cultivated in me that really tapped into being a caregiver and in a helping profession. And I loved nursing, and I would never steer anyone away from entering a career in nursing because it was very, very good to me and offered me lots of opportunity. But I always had this fascination about psychology and things of that nature. But, I'm old school. My mother was a teacher. She still is. My dad that raised me was a cop, and, very kind of traditional gender role, union type of backgrounds. I didn't know anybody that was a therapist at that time and didn't know what to do with my fascination. So, it took me on a very nonlinear path professionally and educationally. And I ended up where I was supposed to be, but I didn't do it the way, I think today's generation is very like, you graduate, you do this job, I have to do what I went to school for. And my journey was not that at all, but
You there,
it's where I
Scott?
was supposed to be.
Okay, we lost you for a minute there. So,
Oh, you did? Okay.
yeah, just for like 30 seconds. No big deal.
Okay.
We got the rest of it.
Okay.
You were still on the screen, so we knew
Okay.
you didn't leave us on purpose. So
Never.
Scott accused you of it. He thought you got bored and you just hightailed it out. But
Well, so far it's only me talking, so I get bored of just listening to myself, I guess.
unfortunately, that's what. So the one thing I mean, I don't know if you have written any books or anything,
No,
but
not yet.
Scott's got the two books, right, Scott, right now, and third on the way.
Yes.
And I have 17 and my 18th on the way. And
Wow.
that's one of the things I can't stand either, is because as an author, when you go on shows and stuff, you're forced to talk about you. So
Right.
I'm a classic. I don't have addiction issues. I do have the mental health side of things, just life in general. Nothing that people assume I do by doing this show. I get accused online sometimes of whether I'm an addict or was an addict and all that. Just because I want to help addicts means I must have been one. But the talking about myself, I use deflection a lot. I tend to deflect away or use comedy. Comedy is a huge deflector for me, even in bad situations, which doesn't work well with relationships and stuff like that. But the talking about yourself is just something you're gonna have to get used to it when you're the guest. That's what you're gonna have to do.
I know. I'm used to being on the other side of the microphone.
I know it is shocking sometimes, but speaking of that, you had Scott on your show. Was he a good guest?
Yes, he was wonderful. The episode hasn't aired yet. It's on the calendar. I think it's going to be this month, though, right? Right around Thanksgiving, we said. So I think it'll really be insightful and enlightening to a lot of people. And Scott is so generous with his time and his cell phone number. So we're hoping that, someone can benefit from his expertise and his passion. But he was a wonderful guest, and hopefully will return again someday.
Oh, he will. He'll keep coming back too, and keep coming back. So, Scott, what do you got to add to this?
Well, I have a list of 34 questions here, but I'm only going to narrow down the important ones. So tell us a little bit about obviously you have your private practice. You're a psychologist. What's interesting to me is you became a CEO of an organization that does this as its main deliverables. So share a little bit about that, because that's a unique, I think, expansion of your field, and the demand for your expertise. I mean, in our community in San Diego, it was just shared last year that we have a 5-year backlog of getting clinical professionals in the seats to provide the services for our population. And this was, it might have been more than that. This was just 4 years ago, maybe before COVID hit. And the demand is so high. And I've seen so many people in the industry who, because there were cuts in treatment centers, have gone into becoming solo practitioners and doing most of their work virtual, some in person.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that drove you to get into a much higher level of, treating obviously a lot more people than you can as a solo practitioner? I'm interested in what took you there, or what brought you there.
Well, it certainly wasn't intentional. I've never had CEO on my bucket list. And so, but I kind of think that's why it happened, Scott, because it was never about that for me. But, I'm very fond of telling people that I have a for-profit brain and a nonprofit heart. And, regardless of whatever my role was professionally, and you can call it, birth order, because I'm an only child. So, I kind of have like all of those typical tendencies, being very driven and accomplished and what have you. Wherever I've ever worked, I give it 1,000%. And that always led into becoming a leader. And getting promoted and acquiring a business acumen. And so it didn't happen intentionally. It just, I guess, if you have the passion and the dedication to excellence all around and the quality of services and who we are as an organization and what our spaces look like and how we engage people, I think if you hang around long enough, eventually, that gets rewarded. And our organization is very much committed to promoting from within and recognizing tenure and talent and passion. And I mean, that's really how it happened for me. And there have been people that have said, oh my God, how did you become a CEO? I want to be a CEO. But that was never the end goal for me. But I take my title very seriously, and I do come from the mindset of to whom much is given, much is required. And I walk the walk and talk the talk. And, who you see here is who you see on the street, who you see in the office. There's no deviation to who I am as a person. If I'm committed to something, and I believe in the cause, I'm going to give all of myself to it. And we have a workforce of almost 500 employees, and we serve almost 30,000 unduplicated individuals a year. And I mean, that's lofty. That's not an easy thing to do. And you have to give it 100%. And I show up for my staff, and I think it's just, for me, it's always been about being passionate, but being genuine and authentic. I mean, that's all we have at the end of the day, because yes, I have a lot of initials after my name. I have like massive student loan debt from all of my education. But I mean, all we really have is our authenticity, because especially in our fields, and especially in working with addictions, people have a good nose for BS, right? They know if you're for real or not. And when you work with people who have struggled and have been disenfranchised and experienced trauma, they know if you're the real deal or not. And I mean, I think that's really been a secret, or not secret, but a key ingredient to my success.
So do you answer to a board of directors?
I do. I have 16 board members. And I always tell everybody, I'm a CEO now. I don't have a boss. I have 16. But I'm very committed to curating a board that is diverse, not only in ethnicity and race, but gender and background. And, I don't want 10 attorneys on my board. I want people from all walks of life that, yes, you can contribute something meaningful as in a monetary donation on an annual basis, but what's, the intellectual piece? What about the passion? And it's very important to me that every single person on my board have lived experience directly or indirectly with mental health or substance use. And I don't think there's a person on the planet. I mean, the statistic is every 1 out of 2 people at some point in their lifetime will be touched, but who hasn't witnessed mental illness or addiction? I don't know anybody that can say that. So it's really important to me that my board members are not there, to network or promote their businesses, but that they're really committed to the mission and, our vision.
Is that a nonprofit organization that you're the CEO?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
It's a nonprofit.
Well, let's talk offline. I think I have a way of getting your student loans handled.
Okay. Well, I'm on it. Yes. Well, I'm in the PSLF program.
Well, what I'm saying is sometimes having a third party come in who's run nonprofits, sat on boards, talking to boards, if you're interested, because there's a lot of things that I've learned. Nonprofit, the explanation I used to hear is that when people come into a boardroom, become a board member, they forget about what it is they've done in their own life paths and challenges in business, and take that hat off and put on a nonprofit hat, and they sometimes forget about it. I've been a founder and I've been a CEO in a couple, and it's there's a lot of interesting things. Give me a call at some point. We'll chit chat about it. Maybe compare notes. So along with that, so how much time can you actually carve out? Because that role probably takes a huge amount of time, and plus you have to manage the board, which is like a separate business in its own right, even if they're all lived experience and committed, because every time they go out in the community, oh yes, I sit on the board with the doctor, and oh, is she doing this and is she doing that? And I love when board members raise their hand and go, I have an idea, which usually means whatever's going to come out of their mouth next is going to be put in front of you to do some research and come back with the feedback, and you'll have to spend more time doing it. So how much time do you get a chance to stay in your solo practicing, working with clients one-on-one?
Well, it's been pared down quite a bit since taking on the role of CEO. And, once upon a time, I used to do 4 nights a week in private practice plus weekends. And now it's maybe 1 or 2 nights a week and sometimes a weekend day. So it's much, much less. And, unless, you called me and said, hey, can you see this person? I really don't take on any new clients unless it's a VIP referral, because I just don't have the bandwidth, and it's not fair if their needs are really high. But I do have 2 excellent therapists that now work in my practice, and other exceptional therapists that are adjacent to me in my practice, but they have their own practices within that dwelling. So I have really great resources to send people to if they're looking for that kind of boutique, for lack of a better word, setting, because we don't participate in insurance, because the majority of us in that practice all have full-time jobs that are quite demanding. So our availability is slim, but it's minimal. But I never want to be the leader that doesn't do the work. So I do not see a time ever where I will not be working with clients one-on-one, because it really brings me joy and it helps me stay in the know, of what's going on and what people's challenges are, so that I can make better choices in business decisions and programming and how to lead a workforce of people doing the same work.
Got it.
Are you starting to see more men are willing to talk in a therapy role?
I do. I mean, the statistic is that it's always women, acquire services 2 times more than men do, for a myriad of reasons. It's DNA. Women are just a little bit more, quote unquote, in touch with their emotions and more inclined to talk about how they're feeling, but I do see that men are accessing services just as much as women, especially in the substance use space, for sure. But I do see a shift more than I have when I first started my career. And I think that conversations like this and podcasts like yours and mine are critical to that, because we need to normalize these discussions. We need to destigmatize. We need to reduce that feeling of shame. And I don't see mental health as anything different to any other domain in healthcare. And if we break our leg, we're not going to walk on it. We're not going to hobble along. We're not going to act like it's okay. We're not going to be ashamed to tell. Maybe if the story is crazy on how we broke it, we might be a little, hesitant to tell somebody. But why would we ever want to not get help if we feel broken inside? If our heart feels broken, or, if we don't feel right in our thoughts. And the more we talk about it, the more I hope people, male or female or otherwise, will access the care that they need. But
Yeah.
that's something that I know is part of my life mission, to make it okay, to make the care accessible, and to reduce that feeling of shame. And I think we're getting there. I mean, the needle is moving. It certainly has in my lifetime, for sure, and it certainly has in my career. And I'm far from being over.
Well,
I have a long.
I do think that, from my age group, I'm 55.
Okay.
And I'm from that era of, I don't got to go to therapy. I don't need therapy. I could fix this. Or why are you going? Men don't do that. Men, the men don't cry. The men don't do this. All this stuff. That childhood trauma. But I'm raising my children, or raised. My children are all grown adults now. But raised them that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's strange that it's kind of a do as I say, not as I do, because I don't live by that same theory that I teach my children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's just being honest. It's a flaw. I know it's a flaw. I recognize it as a flaw. But for instance, like my childhood trauma of being sexually molested as a child didn't come into my life until 5 years ago. 5 years ago. So I held all that in, the story at least. I was able to hold that in from 7 years old till 50 years old. Now I talk about it like it's nothing. It doesn't even faze me. So that's part of me growing, at least my growth cycle.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people out there like me who haven't even begun to talk about it. And people don't understand whenever I wrote it in my book about it. And people, believe it or not, they accuse you of glamorizing the story or something. Or if you say something too truthful, they attack you on your truths. And it's almost to the point where I regret writing the story, but I continue to write it and talk about it. And I think for the same reason you were saying, to make sure the next person sees, if they see me talking about it, who's still fighting it internally to not talk about it, maybe they'll be more apt to talk about it.
And Fred, everybody's on their own journey, right? They're on their own clock. And just like, last month, it was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. There are women that no matter what, they're not going to get a mammogram, right? They're not going to be in charge of their health. They're not going to be proactive. So there are going to be people that no matter what, like therapy is not going to be for them in this lifetime. Like you can't make everyone do it. I mean, I think everyone can benefit from therapy, obviously, but I mean, that's just the way it's going to look regardless of what generation you're in, whether you're a baby boomer, or Gen X or Gen Z or a millennial. It's just there are going to be outliers. But I am curious, because trauma is my clinical specialty, how this came about for you, and that you're still therapy averse, even though you've you had this kind of realization of what happened to you?
I think because I talk about it on the podcast,
Uh-huh.
I wrote a book about it. I feel like I've let that, for lack of a better term, that demon out. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
let it go. I don't need to talk about it with what I would consider a stranger.
Sure.
But when I'm already talking to all the strangers I could possibly reach, so that might be me fighting just a struggle within type thing. And it's a shame. I've got the medical insurance. I've got all the time in the world to do this. I don't feel like I'm broken in any way. I could tell you how I came. I don't know if that was part of the question where you want to know after, let's say, 50 years or 45 years, why did I come out all of a sudden?
Mm-hmm.
And it came out when the actual person that abused me reached out to me and friend requested me on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It was a woman. She requested me. And in that moment, without thinking, I never thought I'd see this person again. She was a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And she was an elder teenager at the time, like 18, 19. I was a child. And I never planned any of this. She reached out. She asked how I was doing. Hey, nice to see you. I see you did this and stuff. And my response was, I'm fine considering what you did to me, without even thinking about it. I never planned on this woman reaching out to me. But once she did it, I felt so good saying that to the person
Right.
that I never stopped talking about it since.
Well, and that's therapeutic in and of itself, right? I mean, when you consider the essence of therapy is to have a safe space where someone can hold that for you and where you can leave it there, right? You know, you've alleviated yourself of this burden that you weren't even consciously aware that you were carrying for decades.
Right. Well, and I knew I was carrying it into other aspects of my life. For
Sure.
instance, dating and sexuality and stuff like that. I
Mm-hmm.
carried it into there, but I didn't know that was the catalyst that created that part of me.
Right.
You know, I wasn't aware until now. You know, now I am aware, and now it doesn't bother me. It's just more the feedback. Especially one thing drives me crazy, and I'm sure you've heard this before. People think it's okay because she's a woman that
Right.
was doing this to me. That, like, I'm lucky. That I've heard that people have said, "How lucky are you that it was?" I said, it didn't. That didn't make a difference at all when I was 7.
Right. Right.
Luck didn't play a role in this,
No.
whether it was a man or a woman. I will admit, maybe it's easier on my mind as a straight male,
Mm-hmm.
but in theory, it has no difference. It's still a crime.
Sure.
And people do it all the time when these teachers, especially, you'll see comments, lucky boy, lucky kid, stuff like that. And it drives me insane because they have no idea what it's like to live with that.
For sure. And, you know, because trauma being my clinical specialty, a lot of my clients have experienced sexual abuse. And so often it's babysitter, neighbor. I mean, I hear that more than family members, you know. So I don't know why. And I guess it's because we trust people, right? You know, and we think like because they're a part of your everyday life that something's not going to happen. And because you're a boy and she was a young woman that, oh, well, we don't think that there's anything strange about that because babysitters are usually teenage girls, you know, and they're usually neighbors. But obviously someone hurt her and crossed a boundary with her because she was trying to process that with you.
Yeah, I think what was the best part about the outcome of that Facebook conversation was her apologizing and admitting. She didn't deny. She said she was going through a rough time and although that doesn't make it easier or anything or right, she apologized. And that is what made me able to talk about it. Her reply made it easier for me at that time. But then I deleted her and blocked her. And now it's over. I don't have to see her.
Well, I'm glad you received that gift.
Yeah. So Scott, how are you? You're just sitting there listening in. Poor Scott listening to my therapy session.
Our goal is to get Fred into treatment in Q1 of next year. And knowing when we first met, we started talking about these kind of things because there's nothing there's nothing in this spectrum that we won't talk about here. And he'll get there, and he's growing a lot. And I know that the fact that we're talking about it today, and there's an expert who's experienced treating people with it. I was at my morning meeting today, and a lot of people, talking about acceptance, and the holidays are here, and people who, who struggle and are trying to process, untreated trauma. It's like you said, I tell people, you break a leg, you don't go on YouTube, you go see an expert.
That's right.
We do that with everything else except for this, maladaptive behavior. So everyone was sharing today about this problem and that, and a guy's got a daughter and another one's this and that. And I said, sometimes people in recovery have to seek other experts to get help. I mean, you can't get a full physical in the fellowship. You can't have someone check your blood or do those. So it's okay, first of all, not to be okay. And it's okay to ask for help. And I really encourage that. And I got a couple of tough texts after the meeting. And, because the fellowship's got some very strong guidelines. And look, the relapse rate is no different in 12-step programs as it is in real life. So I really encourage people to seek other means to potential. And some really need medication. You can hear the level of pain they live with each day. And it's almost like we call it white knuckling it. You can't hold your breath forever.
No.
Pressure bust pipes. And, for a guy like me, if I go back out, I may never get back. So, talking to somebody is or seeking help is a good thing, as long as you are open to the idea of doing it. And my wife and I have talked about these. Oh, I don't want to go see. I got to give them all my history. I said, well, if you want, I can do that in half an hour. But no, that probably won't work. But I think it's important that we have these conversations. And I think you're right. Podcast, and watching Joe Rogan got 50 million views when he had Trump for 3 hours, and then Vance got 15 million views when he was on his show. I think that we're going to see. I think we're seeing it, and I think podcasts are a way for people to get into a portal of information gathering, even if they don't, do this. We do, but they can listen, and they'll hear things that are put and framed in a whole different way than they normally have been through the mainstream. And I think the volume of people that on social media, when they hear something or somebody shared something, they listen in and they go, well, that, I didn't know that. I mean, I've got a guy now that I'm working with on my book, and he's a addiction psychiatrist who, and he's been on our show, I believe, and he's in recovery 15 years now. And he's never written a book, but he's reviewed 1,700 of them.
Wow.
So he's going to help me with my book. And we're talking about the true definitions of ego and narcissism. And because he's worked with so many clients who have gone through it, his insight will be traumatic, tremendous for me and for the book. So I'm just trying to convince him now to take a role. And, you don't have to write anything. You just help me with the content and make sure that we get some really good points of view and historic. He shared with me the other day where narcissism came from. I don't know if you've ever heard this story before, but the very first narcissist was a guy in some country who, before anything really was talked about, but he looked at a pond of water.
Yes, Narcissus.
And
yes.
And he wanted to get closer to himself and ended up drowning. I mean, I've never heard that story.
Yes, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, and when people hear that, they're like, wait, because to me, it's fascinating. And I like the fact that I'm still continuing to learn and be open to information. We're getting Fred there. He's a little resistant because he's stubborn and lives alone now. And we're going to get him there though. Soon he won't have a hat and he'll be wearing a nice little, white shirt with a
little bow tie. I'll be a bow tie guy.
So, Doc, tell us of something, a question that you would like us to ask you that you just wish everyone would ask you? What would that look like?
Well, I think it would be centered around trauma because it is the focal point of my clinical practice. And even at Preferred Behavioral Health Group, where I'm CEO, we have a very trauma-informed culture where everyone is educated on trauma and they know what that might present like with a client. And yes.
Let me stop you for a second.
Sure.
Tell people,
Uh-huh.
you know, in my recovery, people, oh, you have to learn how to love yourself. You have to, you have to fight through that denial. Well, if you've never done it, quick definition of trauma and then what untreated trauma is, because I think people hear these kind of words and they go, well, that doesn't apply to me. I don't suffer from trauma. Well, do you know what trauma is? No,
Yes.
but I say the word a lot. So would you mind?
You're right, because most of my clients don't understand that they're coming to see me for trauma until we name it, right? And if you can't name it, you can't tame it, right? So, but trauma is an event, multiple events, or a set of circumstances that we experience as human beings that can seem overwhelming, too much to handle, and they eventually cause us to have changes psychologically, emotionally, physiologically, biologically, neurologically. And the way I try to, I like metaphors and analogies because for some reason that helps my brain understand concepts. And what I explain to my clients is that when we're born, we're like a shiny brand new car. And things happen to us. Traumatic things happen. And for some people, it's a ding. And for some people, the car gets totaled, right? Or gets in a big accident and it needs a lot of repair. And, the bottom line is that we all experience stuff. We have loss. We have abuse, and abuse looks different. It's not only being hit or slapped or cursed at, it can be very covert and just look like maybe passive aggressive behavior, but we all experience something. And statistically, the numbers are that 7 out of every 10 adults have experienced trauma. But I will tell you that since COVID, it's 10 out of 10. Because that was a set of circumstances, and those circumstances were experienced globally. Where I don't know about you and what it looked like in California, but in New Jersey, I went to the grocery store like in a hazmat suit, like gloves and, whatever. And I was wiping down cans. Like we thought we were going to die just because of buying groceries. So that's trauma. Right? We were life or death. We didn't know if we were going to die, if our loved ones were going to die. So long story short, the bottom line is that when things happen to us, they change us. And after that point, we don't see the world anymore as it is. We see it as we are. So looking at life is like using one of those funky Snapchat filters, right? We're not seeing life as it is. It looks a little different through our lens. And that changes the way we interact with people. It changes our communication style. It changes the way we process our emotions and express them. It changes everything. And depending on how bad our trauma is, it affects our biology. We're more likely to have heart disease. And again, here we are, right? Your crisis coach and your focus of life, Scott, your purpose is we're more likely to abuse drugs. We're more likely to abuse alcohol. We're more likely to have issues at work, chronic illness, smoke cigarettes. I mean, it impacts everything. We're more likely to be homeless, more likely to drop out of school. So, the more severe our trauma is, the more it impacts the course of our life.
And to take it a step further from, what I have experienced in my journey is when someone is suffering from trauma and it's untreated, the impact that they have on their immediate family, their siblings, their children, their parents, their cohorts, their colleagues, as they weave through life, maybe they had an hour worth of patience for somebody. Now they only have a minute. So if they don't get that immediate satisfaction, you're right, self-medicating, it goes even further, to where the gambling industry has just taken off, sleep medication, wake up medication. 25% of our youth are on some medication today. So, people don't, most people want an early, easy, quick fix to how they're feeling. If they're feeling sad or they can't process something, they, fix it. And food, another issue, and sex. And so, and then of course the internet today, and especially young people who are finding a majority of their information from the internet. And the people on the internet aren't necessarily the ones who come with, solid data to help them move to the next level.
Absolutely.
It a quick shortcut, or don't go left, don't go right, turn around, go back to where you were and hunker down, so.
So anyway. Scott, to keep it in a more current before we end the show here, Scott and I were talking before you logged on about the political stuff that just happened and stuff. What do you think? So my opinion on it was, okay, now it's time to just, okay, somebody won, somebody lost. Maybe your guy did, maybe your woman lost, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's over, that part of it. Now it's time to support that other person. I believe that. That's in my opinion. It's time we don't have to forget our mindset or our beliefs and stuff, but it's not a time to root against him. This is still our country. It's still our time. You're going to start seeing a political trauma, because I see it in my family, because my family's right down the middle, including my children. Of my 4 children, 2 are left, 2 are right. And I see that divide. And you're going to see this in a psychotherapy type thing. What is your advice, if you have any, how to deal with, because there are people that are very hurt by this. What would you tell those people?
Well, I want to just affirm and validate everything that you shared, because I know that, the 3 of us here are probably around the same age, even though I look incredibly young. I have 4 adult children, and I've never experienced this type of political divisiveness and contentiousness before. And it's unprecedented, truly. Where the whole country has been at odds. And yes, I agree that, if we practice good civics and good patriotism, we're going to respect whomever is elected into office. But I also do think that there's been a kind of a new culture established where people feel it's really okay to be hateful and anti and really loose with their words. And I've never seen this before. So yes, I agree with you. We need to be good Americans and embrace, but I guess we have to see, what things look like moving forward. But, you bring it up, and I actually sent an email to my entire company today, just saying that, the last 5 days we've been really reflecting on what's happened with the election, and, whether you're happy with our president-elect or not, that we do really important work, and we need to do it in unity. And that in order to move forward, that we need to really take care of ourselves, whether it's to talk to someone on your own time, taking a break from social media and the news, which can feel really difficult and impossible, but it's kind of like medicinal. Like we need to just do all the things that we're supposed to do, sleep and move our bodies and get fresh air, get off screens. And at this point in time, I think it's just, if we can avoid situations where we know there's a divide, or that speak of election and whomever won or lost is unavoidable, that we should really try to just practice good self-care and remove ourselves and not put ourselves in a situation where we know that it's unavoidable. I mean, it's kind of like emotional ICU, right? If you're physically in need of intensive care, it's kind of like everything is quelled. You don't have a lot of visitors, you don't have a lot of activity. It's you're given time to nurture. And I think for a lot of people, we need to be in an emotional intensive care unit right now and just kind of take care of ourselves, get ourselves in a good place so that we can move forward and do all the things that we need to do. Be a good citizen, embrace the candidate, whether you like him or not, because it's been rough. And again, I feel like if we're going back to that definition of trauma, it's a set of circumstances. And I will be very candid with you gentlemen here and whomever's listening that towards the end, as we were getting towards the finish line, I was finding myself crying. I'm Puerto Rican. People were saying that, there was a floating island of garbage called Puerto Rico. Like, that was not easy to hear. And it was really impacting me. So I voted early, did what I had to do, and just turned everything off, because I have to treat my clients the same no matter what issues they're bringing into the milieu. And I have to keep a clear head, right? So I need to do what I need to do. Like, there's a saying, if you want to do the work, you got to do the work. Like, I can't tell you to do it and not do it myself and be effective and authentic. So, I was following my own advice because I found myself being highly, highly emotional and really.
It is interesting. I never thought of it this way because I'm not in the same situation as you. But you're going to help a gentleman or a woman who actually believes it is a floating garbage, whatever, barge.
Yes.
And you still have to, you got to put your best foot forward and help that person still.
For sure. And I have had clients in my career make derogatory comments, and people are never really sure of what my ethnicity is, and my last name is my husband's last name. I'm old school. I didn't keep my maiden name, so it's hard to tell. But you know what? I have to have compassion. It's like, it's God's work, that I'm doing. Like I always say, what I'm doing is a ministry, like anybody, standing in a church. I have to love them unconditionally. I have to treat them with unconditional positive regard and no judgment. And I have to understand, like, that's not against me personally. It's something informing them from their upbringing and their experiences. And I have to meet them where they are, not where I am. But, right. And typically I will tell you, like, that's not a challenge, when you're good at what you do and you've done it a long time, it's not a challenge, but the political climate really got hot. Yeah. And I had to, like they say, put the oxygen mask on myself, because I wasn't going to be able to help someone objectively like I normally do. Yeah. At that point.
So Scott, you want to, before we end this, you want to give your phone number out? Because you love doing that.
I do. Yes. Well, again, happy Veterans Day to everyone, their families. You can always reach me at 619-993-2738, 619-993-2738. And if I can't help you, I promise I'll help you get some help no matter what's going on. And again, the three hardest words in the English language are, I need help. What a good time, the holiday season, you'll be with family. There's going to be a lot of interesting conversations around the outcome. But it is an election. And, government goes on forever, but individuals move on and age and go out and new ones come in. So it's time to start looking at people, I hope, with an open heart. You don't have to with your mind, but if you can open your heart, you take that 12-inch trip from your head to your heart, not only will you feel better, but you will feel better.
Excellent, Scott. Always finish so strong. You're such a strong man. He's my friend. He's my friend. Okay, everybody. So this is your crisis coach with Scott H. Silverman, man, and me, Fred Carroll. And I want to thank you, Tara, for coming. Dr. Tara. I don't want to say the last name because I want to say it like Kalakani still. I like Kalakani, but we'll say Chalakani to make her happy. And if no one has told you they love you today, we love you. We will see you again soon. Make sure you're subscribing and following us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Thanks, everybody. Hang out there for a minute.